Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 11 now of the Starbright podcast. Once again, thank you, Star, for allowing us to use your Discord. If you guys want to hop in the community that we're doing this from, wherever this is being posted, there should be a link in the description below, especially on YouTube. If you just Google Starbright podcast, I happen to know for a fact it actually is the first thing that comes up. So you can find us pretty easily there. And all the links, and there's a whole bunch of different things are all there in the YouTube description to follow. So, go look at that and click on them all and come say hi and come join us. And thank you for listening. As always, we're gonna jump right into this. You guys might notice Drow is not currently here right now. He is getting off work, I think, just a little late, but he should be hopefully joining us as soon as he can. I might have a line on a fourth person, by the way, as well, Mouse, to join us. Someone who's a little bit newer to the scene. So maybe by the next episode, we'll have a nice new member. So that would be cool as well.
Okay.
I don't have any other news really to go over. Pretty calm winter so far for me. We're just getting into it. Haven't had any snow yet, so had some snowflakes, but no, like didn't stick to nothing. So,
it hasn't really started winter yet, but I would say it's been pretty chill so far.
I mean, we had some days that were freezing cold. We had some days where it went down to 25 for a couple days there, like last week. But then it heated back up, and it's been like in the 50s again. And then today was kind of like lower 50s. Now it's in the 40s, but we're getting there. Today's
supposed to be mid 40s. It's going to be chilly.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the super cold. I don't mind 40s all that much, but once we get back down into 20s, I don't like it. But today's episode,
I don't like hot or cold, so I don't like any of it.
Oh, okay. Well, that fulfills the baby aspect there. You just sensation too rough for you. Understandable. Yes. Yeah. Okay. All right. Today's episode, if you guys don't remember, happens to be about Breathplay. Oh, there's Drew now.
Were you guys about to ping me?
No. We Mouse told me that you were running just a little bit late, and we were just gonna. I mean, we basically just started live right now, so
yeah, Drow. I really thought you just walked in and said, "Are you guys gonna pay me?" And I was like, "Wow, I wasn't expecting to be shaken down on the podcast tonight."
Whoa! First of all, I'm getting paid if anyone's getting paid. What the fuck is this?
No. You pay us, because if you don't, we just harass you more.
Listen.
More monster
okay?
porn coming in.
Just because I tucked singles into your waistband when you were dancing for me, Drow, doesn't mean I'm paying you to be on this podcast. That's a different situation.
Darn. I tried.
Gotta dance a little bit better there, Drow.
All right. I mean, I don't have fake thighs for nothing, so might as well use them.
Goddamn right. Hey, if you're good at something, don't do it for free.
Exactly.
But anyway, just as I was saying, today's episode is all about Breathplay. So this is a pretty interesting topic. It's pretty deep. So we do have a bunch to talk about here. I guess we'll start with what is Breathplay. And I guess Mouse and I were actually just talking about this. There are, I guess you'd say, several different kinds of Breathplay.
Yeah. There's a lot of different subclasses of Breathplay. If you say Breathplay, where I go mentally seems to be different from where you go mentally. Because I thought of, last podcast, you mentioned Breathplay, and I completely misunderstood what you meant, because I was thinking of a totally different type of Breathplay.
Yeah, because I mean, there's what's considered safe Breathplay. There's actual Breathplay, like actually playing with someone's breathing, which is a little different than the normal safe Breathplay that most people involved in the scene would know. There's things like and Mouse mentioned this, autoerotic asphyxiation. That's another type of Breathplay. So there's definitely a lot of different interpretations. But maybe we should probably like define these different things, just so we can get a good idea of what we're talking about here. Well, I guess let's start with like the normal safe Breathplay that most people in the scene would think of when it comes to when someone mentions Breathplay. If someone like sees it listed down somewhere, which is generally you're not actually playing with someone's breath. Usually, if you're actually pressing down on someone's throat, especially if you're doing it unintentionally and you don't know what you're doing, that's not a good thing. Normally, and I'm sure plenty of people maybe in the scene who've been around Facebook and different communities and stuff, you may have seen memes about this. You want to grip the sides of the neck. It's not actually about the breathing. You're essentially giving them a triangle choke from the front. You're cutting off the carotid artery right there, which is going to decrease blood flow to someone's brain. And it has the same kind of effects that actually choking them out by their esophagus would, in terms, that they will end up, going unconscious if you don't let up on it. And, it feels like you're suffocating, and then that's the norm for breath play. That's the normal safe breath play. You're a lot less likely to permanently damage someone. It's still not undangerous. I can't say it's safe. And anytime you're knocking someone unconscious for any reason, and you really shouldn't be going far enough to knock someone unconscious. I know some people really like that. I know that's a whole thing. Some people want to lose control to that degree that their partner's actually choking them out. I get it. Generally, you want to bring them right to the edge of that, but not actually shut off their brain. Yeah, what I mean.
It sounds desirable in theory, but in practice, please don't.
Yes, exactly. And when someone says breath play, that is usually in the scene what they're referring to. Now, of course, we mentioned there are different types. So, the other type would actually be choking someone, cutting off their supply of air. And that doesn't have to be in the dangerous way. So if you don't know, it does not take all that much force to collapse someone's trachea by, sitting there and pushing down on their esophagus. And it's one of the reasons why it is recommended you don't do that. But some people do like playing with actual breath. I would recommend there are far more safer alternatives. There are devices and valve gags and all kinds of other fun things where you don't have to press down on someone's throat directly. And if you are interested in that kind of breath play, where you're actually playing with, someone's actual ability to breathe, that you maybe look into some of those rather than, actually damaging or at the very least bruising their throat. It's not even if you don't permanently damage them, you can still, semi-damage them, bruise their throat. That's very, very common with that. So look into those other options. And then of course there's all different kinds of smaller variations. And then there's autoerotic asphyxiation, as we mentioned, is another one where you're choking yourself, which we'll probably get into later, especially when we talk about some of the dangers, because that's maybe the most dangerous thing you can do in kink, in my opinion.
Talking about this, how many people have actually died from attempting autoerotic asphyxiation?
Oh yeah. Are there any other smaller variations, or major variations of breath play that I'm not thinking here?
I mean, I would basically say anything that includes choking would probably fall under breath play. And there are extremes to that. And there are, less extremes. I would say that pretty much anything under breath play tends to be fairly extreme. There is a risk of danger in all of it. But if there's something that you're thinking of doing and it involves compression of the throat or airway, it's breath play. And we have to acknowledge that. Then it all comes with risks. Even the safe, quote, safe forms of breath play do come with associated risks.
Oh yeah, I would even argue some of the stuff that isn't directly choking, but involves the loss of control over your airways. There are aspects of feederism. Some people who are really into feederism, which is this whole thing about eating and even sometimes force feeding someone.
That's why I specified anything involving the airways, because even something that's gagging you to the degree that you cannot breathe, that is absolutely a type of breath play. There are certain types of gags that are very unsafe because they will impact your ability to breathe.
Exactly. And I have seen a lot of those actually as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so now we've gone over some of the basic definitions, the different variations of breath play. Why would someone, before we go into the dangers, why would someone even be into breath play? Because I think that's maybe something that people would wonder about. If you're not into it. And if you're hearing breath play for the first time, you're hearing about it, or, if you just don't know anything about it, I think a lot of people don't know whether they're into it or not, like can't know until, you've had someone or you've had some kind of experience that, engages you in that way, right?
I feel like you really cannot know if you're into it until it happens. Like with most things in kink, until you experience it, there's always that meme of, no, I'm not into that. Then, ooh, maybe
Yeah,
I
the kombucha
am.
girl, like, yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you're not sure, but then something happens. You're like, okay, wait, hold on. I was a little grossed out at first, and this is kind of doing it for me. And I feel like breath play is one of those things that you probably won't be into it until you try it. And I do feel like, it's if you try one of the safer options and it's something that you can do safely with your medical conditions and health, what have you, make sure, I wouldn't say speak to your doctor about it because that'd probably be an awkward conversation, but you know enough about your health that you should make an informed decision based on that. If you feel like got a trach or something, don't fucking engage in breath play. Like, just do not do it.
Yeah, that's a really good call.
Feel like, I would say if you feel like you have to ask your doctor if you can engage in it, don't do it to begin with. If you feel that there's a risk there, do not.
That's a very good call.
I would be a fly on the wall when you ask your doctor about whether or not you should engage in breath play. I would not want to be involved in that one.
It's got to be embarrassing, but I do feel you should be able to, and because there's a lot of aspects to kink that have risks, and especially if you have pre-existing health conditions, I feel like you got to find a doctor you can trust enough to ask those questions to if you have a concern like that.
Where can we find a kink-friendly doctor to answer questions anonymously?
That's a really good question.
Okay.
I feel like this is a service I want to have provided to me. I want somebody with a medical degree to ask them or to answer some questions. My degrees are in biology, so there's some things that I know that other people may not, but I want to have an actual physician answer some of these questions.
I'll have to write that down. Maybe one day we can find someone who can do that. We'll have a whole segment about it.
Ask Reddit. That's a really great one. I mean, I frequent Reddit, and so do you sometimes. So
look, I literally have a smut Reddit. Okay, I was just joking about it today. I was reading some of the really great names that follow me on Reddit. I gotta say, Jack Beta Cuck is my favorite follower right now because that name sent me today. I was scrolling through my list of followers and I almost fucking cried.
That's a self-aware dude. He knows who he is.
I was very impressed. Like, also my 1,000th follower, I will never forget, Hardcock Ninja 69. The names on Reddit are honestly like 10 out of 10. I love these. Every so often I just go to my followers list just for the names.
But anyway, let's get back into this. But what is what makes people who like breath play enjoy breath play? What is it about breath play? Well, there's a couple different aspects to it. There's a couple different aspects. It's not, that's one. The control is one. There's literally almost nothing more directly an indication of trust and control lost than giving your ability to live, your most basic ability to live, which is to breathe, over to a partner. So
for me,
control
that's a large
is a big
part
one.
of it.
Yes,
I have
absolutely.
severe asthma, and I have a lot of emotions tied up in my ability to breathe. I know how scary it is to suddenly not be able to breathe. So for me to give somebody control of my ability to breathe, that is huge. And it can be a turn on if somebody's really safe with that. However, it's not something I do with somebody I didn't trust. So there is a lot of trust for me tied up in that. And I feel like that to varying degrees, other people may have the same thing. It's just one aspect of why it's such an enjoyable thing to do during a scene. But for me, that's a big one.
Yeah, and like I said, there are other aspects. So there's the whole thing when it comes to especially suffocation. But when the body thinks it's dying, it goes into this kind of overdrive panic state. And this is the same in drowning. This is the same if you're if your shot is and any time where you can consciously realize, hey, I'm dying, the body kind of goes into this kind of panic mode. But suffocation is you don't die immediately from suffocation. So it's well known for being this very quick and easy method to get your body into this state. And one of the possible things that happens when your body goes into this overdrive, hey, I need to survive kind of mode. And I actually, the last I recall reading about this, we actually don't medically know why one of the reactions of this is arousal. But one of the things your body does sometimes, depending on the person, during this reaction is there are people that get very incredibly aroused, and it's apparently it's known to be one of the most like excitable, arousable, like intense states for people who do get that reaction, to the point where people
say that
get
there's
even addicted to it.
There's really no good way to medically test to see what's causing this either, because like under what circumstances could you ethically test suffocating somebody and then putting them in an MRI or testing their hormones?
Yep.
You really can't ethically test for this. But I think there is an argument to be made about the adrenaline rush that you experience. There could be endorphins. There could be all sorts of chemicals released in order to make the pain less, make the shock less, make you less scared. I know that allegedly a lot of people who claim to have nearly drowned also state that, you know, they've had this sense of euphoria right before they were about to die, and they managed to come back from it. And I think that the argument could be made that that's basically the same thing that's happening to a lot of people during asphyxiation and sexual asphyxiation and choking. Choking, I think, is a little bit different because it's not quite the same, but I would argue that it's probably all under that umbrella of hormones and chemicals that are being released by your brain in reaction to this stress.
Yep, and it's a big one for, I think, a lot of people who are really into breathplay as a kink. I mean, again, like you said, it's just even the normal reaction. Like even if you're not getting aroused from it directly, you know, even just the normal reaction, all that adrenaline coming through, all, you know, the panic and like all of that. Yeah, like even even that is just such a rush, you know. And then to take it to the extreme, then obviously, you know, autoerotic asphyxiation, people are, you know, are into it to such a degree that, you know, they'll even just do it to themselves if they can, you know, because you know the reaction there is just such an experience. And I guess it's probably the same. It's the same kind of like adrenaline rush and like physical reactions that people experience chasing after like adrenaline rushes. Like I'm sure people skydiving, people, you know, base jumping, all those I'm sure have a very similar, you know, physical reactions to, you know, like, oh my God, I'm like this inches close, you know, to death, you know. So it's all very related. If you liked a lot of those extreme things, if you've done them before, there's a very good chance you might enjoy breathplay if you haven't tried it. Not a guarantee, mind you, but there's a good chance.
I think if it's something you think you might enjoy, find somebody safe to give it a shot, because one of those situations of don't knock it till you try, you may not even realize you like it until you give it a shot. I've met a lot of people who are like, oh, definitely do not choke me. Do not put your hand on my throat. But once they try, all of a sudden they're like, okay, we go full kombucha girl. Like, well, maybe this is okay. Maybe. And then they're really into it the next time you talk to them. If people, once they try it, may be surprised how much they like it.
Oh yeah, and there's really no way to know beforehand unless you try it. Only because, you know, unless you're into a lot of those crazy, you know, death-defying stuff, and you know your body's going to react that way to death. Like you aren't going to know in advance. It's impossible to know exactly, you know, what that's going to feel like to you, and because that's different for everybody basically.
Oh yeah,
and especially, and that's one of the reasons for the different variations of breathplay too. Is some people really want that choking. Some people want the feeling of their actual airway being restricted, and it's also part of that mental experience for them. They want to know that it's their breath that's being affected, and not just their carotid artery. They want to know that they're actually, you know, can't breathe even if they wanted to. So, you know, there are, again, a lot of different aspects as to why someone might be into it and enjoy it. It's just this is one you really got to test for yourself.
Yeah. It's one of those things that it is very extreme to some degree when you get to certain levels of it. I would say do not start with something like a valve mask or something that's going to completely cut up your breathing and be completely dependent on your partner. Would not start there, especially not with both of you being inexperienced. I know a lot of people like have this whole thing where I want somebody to control my breath, but they really don't have experience with some of these bigger, scarier breath play mechanisms. There are masks you can get to control breathing that with a valve where the only time you can breathe is if your partner opens the valve. There are people who are very into breath play, and that's the kind of thing that they do. Do not start there under any circumstances, unless you are very, very well versed in other forms of breath play. Do not start on that extreme end. Start small. Start with choking. Start with maybe mild asphyxiation and see how you do and how trustworthy your partner is and how easily they can read when you need to be able to breathe. Because this is big stuff, and the risk is huge, catastrophically huge. We cannot underscore how many people have died from breath play gone wrong.
Exactly, and you have to and even if you're not sure, you should always do your research on anything for that matter in kink, because a lot of it, especially with breath play and some of the other stuff that we tend to be into, can be very, very life-threatening. That's why you always have to make sure you do your reading on it too if you're new to it.
Yeah, this is one of those things that I feel like we normalize in our community. Breath play is just for us, breath play is almost vanilla. Choking is just everyone does it. If you don't do choking, like, are you even into kink? And no, to be clear, you do not have to be into choking to be into kink. It's just one of those extremely common kinks. But for us, we normalize it, and we need to discuss more readily how much risk is involved even with choking. Because there is a possibility for disrupting those arteries enough that it could result in clotting. Like, of course, it's not a huge risk, but if you're prone to it, you may really want to talk to your doctor about what that compression on that area could cause. These are things that are not without risk, even though they are incredibly normalized for our community. And I just don't feel like we discuss that kind of thing enough. Like, how many things in our community are extremely dangerous, but so normalized, we just never discuss it.
Right.
Oh yeah.
And like I said, some of the other stuff that I'm sure we'll talk about at some point too, can also be extremely dangerous.
Oh yeah.
Like knife play, for example, that could be very dangerous.
Needle play is a big one. I know a lot of people who are into needle play. Like, that has a huge risk of infection and accidents and things going wrong.
Exactly.
Bondage in general, certain acts with like shibari and especially shibari hanging. Something goes wrong, you fall, you could have a lot of damage. That could potentially even kill you.
Exactly.
We don't discuss this stuff is so normalized. We just don't discuss the dangers, and I feel like that's a hazard in our community that we just don't discuss this enough.
Right, which actually, those are actually good topics to talk about for future podcasts, actually. I feel like.
Yeah. I feel like the topic of like discussing the dangers of things that we normalize is massive. And I try to bring it up every chance we get. Like, we don't talk about how dangerous this is. Or we do have a different culture. We really do have a different culture in our community where the things that we have normalized really aren't safe necessarily. They're just so everyday for us that we tend to glance over the dangers that are being presented, because it's normal for us. And if somebody hops into, say, the Facebook admin community without like having an extreme amount of experience, so I kind of wish Liv was here, because Liv would have been able to like give her experience. Some of the things that they may be exposed to or that we talk about or romanticize, we don't actually talk about the dangers associated with them very much when we romanticize them. So without like having somebody pointing out to her along the way, like, why we also have to be careful with this activity, it's very easy to think you understand something without actually understanding it.
100%.
No kink is probably more dangerous and more at risk of, serious harm to yourself than autoerotic asphyxiation, which is a big part of breath play. A lot of people are into that. And and since we're talking about the dangers now, collapse trachea, number one, especially if you're doing, actual choking. That's a thing. There's a lot of martial arts that are taught, you strike the throat, collapse the trachea, you can kill someone that way. If you don't get help very, very swiftly. if someone's not on hand with a knife for a tracheotomy, it's very possible they're just gonna fucking choke to death right there on the floor. And then even if you're doing it the safe way, you cut off the carotid arteries. Sometimes the brain doesn't want to restart. You can send someone to a vegetative state. You can end up stopping their heart too. Like it's
yeah. Oh yeah, you could trigger an asthma attack in somebody who didn't even know they had asthma. That kind of irritation. Then there's clotting. I mentioned it, but like anytime an artery is suppressed like that or compressed, there's a small chance of a clot, especially if it's done repeatedly long term. Like that's why we talk about clotting risk when you sit still or like have compression in certain areas for a while. Like it's not a huge risk, but it's a big enough risk. You really should be aware. I actually just Googled it too. The FBI estimates that between 500 and 1,000 people die each year of autoerotic asphyxiation.
Yep, and there's been some like huge famous names on that list over the years. People found with belts and other things, wrapped around their neck because they were doing it to themselves. And that's part of that's the most dangerous thing, is that even if you want to choke yourself, fine, sure. You want to use a tool for it, fine, sure. But I kind of feel like engagement with autoerotic asphyxiation should still not happen alone. You're doing it to yourself, sure. Have someone spotting you there. Have someone, if you can, have someone that can check in on you, because the most dangerous part of choking is, getting your air back, making sure your partner stops choking you. Whichever way you're going about breath play, and with autoerotic asphyxiation, unless you have some like crazy setup where you can guarantee you're going to be able to get yourself free, what happens is that, someone wraps a belt around their neck and makes it too tight and then realizes, hey, it's stuck and I can't get it off. And because they're alone, in a room, in a closet, hiding because of what they're doing to themselves, and they're ashamed that they're doing it to themselves, and they didn't tell anyone they're doing it. Well, you just are stuck not breathing because you cannot get that belt off. And then, that's the end of you. And considering it's already one of the most dangerous things you can technically engage in with someone who doesn't know how to do it, doing it alone to yourself without like a safety release of some sort, it's really not, I don't know a good way to put that. I mean, I don't want to just say not smart. It's not smart. You really shouldn't do that if you can help it. But it's just, you have to think of the possible consequences. And that's the one that carries the most weight, because you have no one there to help you if you fuck up, no one there to release you. And you have maybe a minute, 2 minutes, if you're lucky, depending on, how tight that's wrapped around your throat, where you're going to stay conscious, and then you're out, and then that's it for you. And it's dangerous.
Exactly.
It's very dangerous.
I will say, I do want to add the caveat that I did actually do more research into what I said about the autoerotic asphyxiation rates. Apparently, there is new research saying it's actually less than that the yearly autoerotic deaths in the U.S., I'm surprised somebody actually did a study on this, but they are saying it's probably closer to 160 every year. Oh, so at least in the U.S., 160 people at least die every year from autoerotic asphyxiation, according to this one study. But that's still way higher than really should be allowed.
Yeah, you're not having 160 people in the U.S. die from anal. It's.
I mean, we could make arguments that they do, but well, yeah. I mean, there's a possibility for everything. Just think of like a prolapse gone wrong or something. Like there's a possibility for hemorrhage, for there's actually in some ways an increased risk of cancer. So I mean, we could argue like there a lot of things we talk about in kink actually do carry risks that may not even be short-term risks. They may be more long-term. You have to be aware of. Repeatedly engaging in anal can at times increase your risk of certain STDs that will increase your risk of cancer, unfortunately. Everything comes with risks, and it's not always something we discuss. And I feel like we should. If we don't acknowledge these risks, we're doing ourselves a disservice. So, I mean, everything does carry risks. Oral carries risks. I mean, everything carries risks. And hot or not, we do have to actually acknowledge these things can be risky. And I don't think we do that enough. Blood play is another one that I think is hugely risky that we don't talk about. And there's a lot of people who are into blood play. A lot more than you might think if you're coming in as a newbie. Blood play is actually not super uncommon. There's a lot of people who are into it to some degree or another. And the risk for that is much higher than some of us think.
I actually don't see a lot of people with blood play.
I think it's one of those taboo things that we don't always discuss until we're actually vetting partners. Because a lot of the people that I've talked to that are into blood play, it's not something they're going to talk about a whole lot at dinner parties.
Exactly.
You know? It's not something you bring up all the time. Like a lot of people who are into potty play, they're not going to bring it up on the first date. They might ask you, you know, on the third date, do you mind if I watch you pee? And then you're like, yes, please do not. Me personally, anyway, I've had some really awkward things where I'm like, well, I'm going to run to the bathroom, and somebody asked me if they could follow, and I'm like, no, absolutely not. Like, I never indicated I was into this, but like, surprise, they were, and I found out later.
Yeah, that definitely
also
happen.
Potty play, big one, big risks. People don't talk about how much risk there is in there, but no, pee is not sterile. Once it leaves your body, and even sometimes when it's in your body, it is not sterile. Do not think that.
But dodgeball. I drink because it's sterile and I like the taste.
I'm having flashbacks to my time dealing with medical misinformation and the number of people who drink aged urine.
All right, enough of this topic. I'm done. I don't want to know about aged urine. Thank you very much.
Wait till you find out about aged urine mushrooms, okay? It's a thing that they discuss.
Oh, I know too much now.
The curse
I've learned too much. No.
I know Sapphire's going to listen to this and then message me and go, what the fuck, Mouse? I thought I was safe.
Oh.
This came up in voice chat in my server the other day, full disclosure.
Oh my God.
But no. Let's be very clear. Urine is not sterile. It is not safe to play in. I mean, you can if that's your thing. No kink shaming here. Not my thing, because I have degrees in biology and I just am like, please no. But it's not sterile, so please don't make the mistake. Obviously, with fecal play, there's a huge amount of risks. We don't discuss enough how much risks there are inherent in kink. And we should.
I would agree with that. I would agree.
And now I feel really good now. I've officially traumatized Will again.
I think like
traumatized me the first time. Really.
I think every podcast we say at least one thing that traumatizes Will for the week, and then he thinks about it.
This is the first thing that's really traumatized me. I really didn't need to know about aged urine mushroom.
Will, we remember your reaction to Monster Fucking Don't Even.
You're like, we're like, yes.
I can't live up to that. I'm not, I was never in shock. I watched Monster Musume, okay, all right? Monster fucking wasn't new to me. I wasn't shocked by that knowledge.
As your lovely co-hosts, I believe it is, in our right to make you question yourself sometimes.
Oh.
And you're also friends with us, so it's also kind of that's just perfectly balanced.
Listen, this doesn't. Listen. Unless you're about to tell me you're into aged urine mushrooms, I'm good. That's now a pain we all live with. Okay, yeah, it didn't just shock me. Okay, everyone who listens to this in the future, everybody.
I spent a lot of time in medical misinformation debunking, and let me tell you, I have heard and seen some things. So anytime water sports are brought up to me, I'm just like traumatized with the curse of knowledge.
I believe it.
Anyway, yeah. There's actually worse than that out there, I assure you.
No, I'm sure there is a lot of corners of the internet I very purposely don't go into because willful ignorance is usually not a good thing, but blissful ignorance can be.
Yeah, blissful ignorance, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, we will summarize this with I could traumatize you guys again. I actually one time got a
Oh
little
no.
curious and decided to look up the risks of foot play. Did you know you can get foot STDs? Because I now know this.
No. No, I did not.
Apparently, did you know that athlete's foot, jock itch, and ringworm are all the same fungus? And that, yes, if you engage in foot play prior to anal, you could actually get ringworm in your ass.
Oh, you're talking about that. I actually did know that already.
Yes. And that's why my whole server had that joke, feet not even once, because I traumatized everybody by explaining all of the STDs I found out that you could get from feet. And I was just curious. I was just wondering what the risks were. And me, being a curious biologist, found some pictures I really did not want to see.
Right.
But I learned also foot herpes is a thing. You can actually foot syph. You can get foot syphilis too. I've seen the pictures.
God damn.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
What's syphilis? That's very.
Yeah. If you have a weakened immune system or are just, getting a little bit older and have worsened circulation, diabetes is also a risk of this too. You could actually get STDs on your feet. And if you have athlete's foot, you can get athlete's foot on your genitals, also known as jock itch and ringworm, and potentially even internally. Imagine, though, will you?
No,
Athlete's foot on your anus.
I won't imagine.
I don't think that's something we want to imagine. That'd be awful.
Yeah.
I would rather choke to death because I wrapped the belt around my neck in my house alone.
This might be your reason to try it, huh?
Maybe. You've driven me to it. I'm experiencing the lows of the lows. I need the highest of the highs now. It's the only way to balance this out.
So the curse of knowledge leads me to Google the risk factors of things sometimes, and sometimes I really traumatize myself. It's like the time that I Googled sexy Oogie Boogie for you guys after Will said he'd dress up as Oogie Boogie for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I still have to find some way to put an ovipositor on the front of that.
Poor Will gets traumatized every time we have a podcast.
I don't know if we ever
this
even
is the first time I've been
explained
traumatized.
I don't even know if we explained the ovipositor joke on the podcast before, but Will just dropped it in there.
Well, that wasn't even related to making it into a weapon. That was just for your enjoyment, Mass.
So for those of you who are unaware of this, weaponized ovipositors has been a long-term joke, like turning an ovipositor basically into a lubed up potato gun, more or less. It's on the agenda. Yeah, exactly. It's on the agenda of things we want to try. Maybe not internally, but I feel like it'd be a great way to play paintball, just colored lube, just smack each other with eggs long distance.
Right, internally, I can't imagine what that actually would look like.
No, that's actually what I feel like would be somebody's cause of death. I really would not highly. I would not encourage. I would not encourage internalized potato gun eggs. Do not do that. You heard it here first. That is not medically approved. Please do not.
Discovered a new kink even more dangerous than autoerotic asphyxiation. Goddamn.
If we weaponize the ovipositor, it is no longer for internal use.
Do not. Kink online.
The weaponized ovipositor will be strictly as entertainment and a means of home defense, and that's it.
I mean, you can say that all you want, but people are going to do what people do.
Do not use the weaponized ovipositor internally, please.
It's funny that because earlier we were talking about how unhinged our podcast gets, and well, here we are.
They should hear us once we get off air. It's so much worse. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Speaking of breath play, one of us is going to die asphyxiating from laughing one of these days.
I'll probably be you, Mouse.
I'm
Let's be
crying
honest.
a
You're
little bit right
accidental
now.
prone, so you're the one that's accidental prone, so it'll probably be you.
I'm
100%.
crying right now. Okay.
Laughter sets off asthma. Asthma kills mouse.
Exactly.
It is not outside of the realm of possibility.
I think Dra, we gotta wait until like we're in the middle of an episode one day and then like send her like a video of us shooting each other with weaponized ovipositors and she would die on air.
Right.
Probably.
Oh man. So proud of this podcast and this episode hit now. I'm like, oh my god. What are we even doing?
Hey, it was your brainchild, so
Great pain. Immense pain.
Sorry, guys.
We're just rolling with it.
Oy, oy, oy.
We went a little off topic this time, but I think it was worth it.
I mean, I suppose. Oh,
Speaking of water sports, I forgot to mention my cat peed on me earlier, and I was complaining about it to Will.
It was deserved. Mouse ambushed her cat and, did all these awful things to it. Laid traps down, essentially.
My elderly cat tripped over the liner to her litter box and fell, and I went.
Why'd you leave the liner there? You put that liner there, okay? It was a trap.
I don't know how she got her foot wrapped up in the litter box liner, but she did. And I went to go help, and she peed on me.
Deserved. It was completely deserved. Justice was delivered swiftly.
Oh, it was. I learned a valuable lesson about helping my cat when she feeds plants in her litter box. Just leave her there.
Yep. Well, I mean, if you're gonna put her in that situation and trap her there, I mean, you just give mixed signals. Here, let me fuck up your litter box, and then hey, let me rescue from it. Like, stick to one or the other. Goddamn.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I guess we've kind of gone over Breathplay, right? I can't think of anything we're really missing from this episode, right? Is there anything we didn't discuss? Anything we didn't talk over?
I feel like we did a pretty thorough job.
This episode is pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is to be aware of who your partner is. Make sure you trust them literally implicitly, because these people will be in control of your breathing if you're into Breathplay. So this is another one of those aspects where we have to talk about how incredibly fucking important it is to vet your partners. This is something I would not recommend. I would not recommend choking on your first date with somebody or your first scene with somebody, because this is kind of something that choking is very basic to us, but you don't necessarily know that your partner is going to, choke in a way that you feel safe. And you wouldn't want to tap out on your first scene just because you didn't communicate as into what they interpret as Breathplay.
This is also really important during the vetting process too.
Yes. And even if you have vetted extensively, unless you have had a long-term conversation with this person for months and months and months prior to engaging your first scene, I would not suggest hooking up with somebody from, say, FetLife and just assuming they know what they're doing. Just because they're in the scene doesn't mean they know how to choke safely. There are a lot of people who still do not necessarily know what they're doing, or maybe their prior partners were really into asphyxiation and that's not really your thing. You just want the gentle squeeze on the sides of the neck. You do have to communicate these things extensively and make sure that everything that you're about to do is exactly interpreted the same by you guys. Because as we did last podcast, when Will said Breathplay, my mind went straight to Breathplay as an asphyxiation. And he was thinking more like choking. And that miscommunication can happen because there are such a big variety of ways to engage in Breathplay. You don't want to have that misconception or that miscommunication come up before a scene where you tell your partner, I'm into Breathplay, and they assume you mean that you want to have your face pushed into a pillow for the entirety of the event. Because that may not be something you can handle. I mean, some people are into that. Some people are into CNC role play where they have their face pushed into a pillow and are more or less suffocated. And if you say breath play, your partner, if that's what they're usually into, may not actually understand that you were not okaying that. So this is a huge communication gap that could occur if you are not very careful.
If you need some directions on how exactly to approach that and how exactly you should frame, because it's not just about breath play, it's about anything that's even slightly dangerous that you're doing here, right? We do have an episode on consent where we talk about different consent frameworks and how they relate to communicating with someone you're interested in, and like what you want to do and how to do that kind of thing kind of safely in order to work out what exactly is going to happen, and make sure everyone's well informed and well educated on the subject, and no one's going to go into something without knowing what the risks of that are and hopefully how to avoid that happening. So go check that episode out. But yeah, it's I mean, we always say to be really careful, and I mean you should about it. And anything we've talked about, because I mean I've defined kink like that before, where it is the safe exploration of things that in other situations would be dangerous or damaging or unhealthy, and that is what it is. So because these things can be unsafe and damaging and unhealthy to differing degrees, breath play just being more so than most others, like everything else we've talked about, definitely go do that research, go get educated, talk about it with your partner before doing it, make sure you actually understand what's going on, because it's if you don't, it's real risky if you don't do that. It's just dangerous, and no one wants anyone to permanently be hurt.
Exactly.
The risk
is just a little bit. Yeah, this is just the risk here is higher for permanent damage, and permanent damage being, trauma, scarring, and even up to death. So when we say be very careful, we mean please be very careful. We do not want to see anyone hurt in the attempt to explore their.
Well, whoever came up with aged urine mushrooms I don't really care what happens to them, but everyone else.
Will's never going to recover from this one.
No, that's just that's one of that should have been in the taboo episode. That's.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, I don't think it's a kink. I think it's just an alternative medicine thing.
Okay.
Yeah. If somebody ever told me that was their kink, it would be a red flag, and I would walk away very quickly.
As everyone should.
I would say instead of just walking away, I'd be like power walking away, with some emphasis on away.
Goddamn right. All right. So that being said, what is next episode going to be about? What would you guys like to talk about next time?
We did talk about the potential of doing an episode or even a series on what the differences in relationships and dynamics in the BDSM community in our culture, as opposed to how it would normally work in a vanilla relationship. Because our relationship structures are very different from how they appear in many vanilla relationships.
I don't remember if we talked about it last podcast, but I remember you and I talking about that, Mouse.
Yeah, we did talk about it at the very end of last podcast, but we were just also talking about it earlier today because it came up in my server. We were talking about how different our relationship structures can be, because once you get into BDSM, you find out that there's a lot of different situationships that can occur that would not normally appear in a vanilla relationship structure.
Yeah, okay. We could talk relationship dynamics, at least for the next episode, if not even for more than one. We'll see how it goes. So I'm down for that.
I'd be down.
It would be a fun one because there is so much difference.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
Trying to explain your relationship dynamic to somebody outside of the lifestyle can be difficult.
If not impossible, because just because someone is your dominant or your sub doesn't even necessarily mean you're in any kind of vanilla relationship with them. You can have that be totally platonic to a degree. And how do you explain that you get dominated by someone that you're not partnered with in any kind of way outside of that. It's
Correct. Oh yeah.
So yeah, we'll give that a go. That'll be next episode. Again, I hope you guys all enjoyed this one. Again, if you Google Starbright podcast, we are the first on that list. Again, I have a special surprise that is not related to having a fourth person. Oh yeah, Drow was not here for that. I might have someone to come on and join us for the next episode. We'll see. And in perpetuity from that, hopefully. We'll see what happens.
Mhm.
But and then I have another surprise that might hopefully be ready by next episode as well. So progress, not perfection. It's all getting better. But if you enjoyed listening, I hope you liked, subscribed, click on the socials in the description. If you will Starbright podcast, again, you'll find it on my YouTube, where all episodes of this show are backed up if you'd like to go and listen to them and hear us just ramble about the same kind of shit that we did today. I hope you guys all enjoyed listening, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Have a good Thanksgiving, everybody, because I think it's Thanksgiving before we meet back up, right? So day after Thanksgiving, I think is the next episode.
Insane to think that we're moving that fast, but yeah.
Yeah, it is. So have a good Thanksgiving, everybody, and we'll see you guys next time.